Um, in progress. Okay, good. So because I want this to be available for future sessions as well. And maybe, oh, there's her. Maybe for people elsewhere. It's my material, so I may send it to other people. Okay, Kabbalah is a subject that everybody thinks they know a lot about, but very few people really do. Um, the first question, which is also not so easy to answer, is how do you spell it? Just like how do you spell Hanukkah, or how do you spell Pesach? Um, uh, I'm not going to do a Hebrew lesson, but I'll simply say and this is easier than Hanukkah or Pesach because there's no ch. Okay, so the letter that's in Hanukkah and in Pesach is a chet, and it's pronounced ch. But academics, see, there's always this question of how do you write something? Do you write it orthographically or phonologically? Orthographically is what is the letter and what is it um, the English letter symbolize. This happens with Chinese and Mandarin too, and French. Or do you pronounce or you spell it how it's pronounced? So if you just wanted to say Hanukkah, you could do it ch. Okay, so Kabbalah, and I have another slide. I'm not going to. Maybe I can show that too. Um, Spelling. Okay, there. It is. It's in the chat. It is, the letters are K, B, L, H. All right. Um, the word is, and this gets us to the definition, the word is to receive. So a received tradition, Kabbalah is a received tradition that was passed on privately at first, esoterically to the best students or the more enlightened students. And so they took the name that which is received. It also means to receive, the reception. So I am receiving. Where did I receive this from? I received it from my teacher. Where did they get it from? They got it from their teacher. So passed on. So another word for Kabbalah might be tradition, but not tradition like Tevye tradition, but really a deep, secret or esoteric tradition. But implied in this word is also reception. In order to receive, you have to be open to receive. Where are we receiving? Well, we're receiving not just from our teachers or from the rabbi or from the teacher or from a book. We're also receiving from God, from heaven. So reception, being receptive. Now, the reason why there's different groups that spell it different ways. So K is the normal way to spell a kuf. B is the normal way to spell a bet. Lamed, or L is the normal way to spell a lamed, and H is the normal way to replace the hey. So that's how we have KBLAH, or Kabbalah. Now, technically, the kuf is a guttural letter. Long story short, I'm not going to get into it. So it's deeper than a K. It's way down the deep throat, like so. Yaakov, the Quran in Arabic. Quran is often spelled with a Q. So academics started spelling it Kabbalah with a Q. And so that's how that's done. So what happened, and that leads us to what we're going to talk about a little later, a group of Christian mystics and other mystics were exposed to Jewish Kabbalah, and because their teachers were mostly academics, they spelled it with a Q. So you'll see it that way. But here's the kicker. Most of the time when you see it spelled KBLAH, it is Jewish Kabbalah taught by rabbis, taught by Jews, for Jews, or at least for general consumption. Most of the time, today, if you pick up a book in, does Barnes and Noble exist anymore? Okay. Anyway, if you pick up a book online and you say, I'm looking for a book on Kabbalah, and you happen to pick up one with a Q, it's very likely that it's Hermetic, Christian, or I'm not saying it's Christian bad, but it's not Jewish sources. It's more of the mystical um, kind of I want to say new agey type of group, and I'm going to get into that later on to explain what practical Kabbalah means. Okay, Barnes and Nobles exists. Christina says she spends too much money there. All right, now, so the other spelling sometimes is Cabalah, right? Kabbalah with a C. That's perfectly legit. However, because Kabbalah was taught secretly at first, um, it became the word cabal. He's part of a cabal or a secret society or, a bunch of spies is a cabal. So cabal also became kind of implied as evil. So the best spelling, if you're looking for a Jewish book, is with a K. All right, enough of that. All right, so I want to tell you again what I've said many, many times. This is your Bible. All right, so is Telushkin, Jewish literacy. But if you're going to say, I want to explore a subject, just basic and begin it, and then I'll take it deeper. So start with Ted, and then go to Joe, and then go to Rabbi Blech. What's Blech's first name? Um, Benjamin Blech. So I said, Ted Falcon and I are personal friends, go back many years. Um, now, I want to start with some of you have read. Oh, there's Herb. Herb will introduce himself in a minute. He's from LA. He's my private student. I just told him today he's going to win the award for the longest student of Judaism because we've known each other since he was a member of my shul in West Covina in the 90s. I want to do my PowerPoint, okay? So you have some place to start. So let's look at that. And some of you, I know you might have read some things, but this is meant to, a PowerPoint, as you know, is meant to be, okay, Pablo's here, Pablo and Darla from Gainesville, Florida. A PowerPoint is meant to be shared in a way that is easy and straightforward. So I did this at the synagogue. I've done it elsewhere. So here we go. I want to see if somebody would read instead of me. All religions have mystical traditions. Anybody? No takers?
I'll go.
Go, Sam.
All religions have mystical traditions among those who are interested in gaining a direct experience of the divine. Example, Christian
It's no,
Gnostic,
the G is silence, or yeah,
Gnostics,
Gnostics.
Muslim Sufis,
In
and Hindu yogis. In
Okay.
Judaism, it is called Kabbalah, the received. Um, the mystic says, "Don't tell me about it. I want to experience it." Torah, frontal teaching, lecture hall. Mishnah, learning in pairs or debate, TA's notes. Talmud, argument, discussion, analysis, study group. And Kabbalah, inner learning from teacher, meta level.
Okay, now I'll explain what I meant by those terms. But thank you, Sam. And these were just, a PowerPoint is also not meant to replace the lesson. It's just, notes. First question we should ask, we're studying introduction, basic Judaism. What is a mystic? Any mystic? A mystic, I mean, is my simple definition. A mystic is simply a person who is not content to um, hear this is what the religion believes, or this is what the story of Moses at the burning bush, or for that matter, Mohammed and in the desert meditating and receiving the Quran, Buddha sitting under the Bodhi tree. I'm loosely comparing other traditions. So he doesn't want to do that. You told me that story. That's great. I'm interested. I want to be Buddha. I want to experience what they experienced. Naturally they can't, but they want to feel it. So don't tell me about it. I want to experience it. So then I'm not going to get into these at length, but the Gnostics go all the way back to, again, the same period as the Kabbalah, just after the Roman destruction and into the Christian period. And they still exist. I mean, you don't walk around saying, I am a Gnostic. Gnosticism is simply structure of the universe in terms that they can relate to other disciplines. Now, Sufis and of course Hinduism are traditions in which, again, I'm not going to get into it at length, but they use chants, as you know, if you study yoga, if you've heard about it or you've even been to a yoga class. But Hinduism is a mystical tradition. But your average Hindu is just like your average Jew. You don't walk up to some guy in New Delhi and say, "Hi, can you tell me, all about your past lives?" They're just going to say, I pray to this God or pray to that. They're not enlightened. But the enlightened Raja Yoga people really had a deep sense of what it meant to be in touch with the divine. But a good comparison would be Sufis, and I'll mention here, and maybe I can put them in the chat. If you want to hear Arabic music done in that tradition, reaching out to God. I'm going to talk about that in a minute with the Jewish mystics as well. There is a guy, contemporary, he's still around. He's probably in his 70s now, Omar Faruk Tekbilek from Turkey. He now lives in New York, married to an American woman. And if you got to see a concert with Omar, he plays drum and flute and sings and he chants. But a Sufi will chant. I'm getting off into it. I didn't want to, but I'm moved by the way they chant the name of God. Allah, 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 Allah. And don't give me this. It's not militaristic Islam. It's beautiful. So, in any event, back to what Sam read here, we have 4 words that all have to do with different ways of learning. That's why I wrote that. Torah is meant, not only, but you listen to Moses, you read the Torah, you chant it out loud to people. So that's how we learn, right? So I don't want to say it's a lecture hall, but that's a kind of learning. God gives, we receive. That is Torah. So it means instruction. Torah, one of the meanings of the word Torah is instruction. Now, I've talked about 2 weeks ago, a second kind of learning that you can do sitting around in pairs. What did the teacher say? I had a TA. The TA, you sit down with the TA, the teacher's assistant, and you sit down with 5 other members of the class. But in Mishnah, it's always two people. And they study, they read, they discuss, and in the Mishnah means 2, so pairs. Then the third level that we talked about is how Talmud, or actually Gemara, but developed as a way of discussing what do you think? Well, what do they mean by that? What do they mean by this? So that's discussion, analysis. So that would be like the study group. All right, but let me stop the share for just a second. And in a minute, Pablo and Herbert can meet each other. Herb's not, his camera's not on. Did you ever have a teacher or a Boy Scout leader, a choir teacher, a guitar teacher, in my case, maybe somebody, or your father, your mother, your grandfather, your grandmother, somebody that told you stories or taught you something, but what you learned from them was not only the physical manifestation of that learning. You might have learned calmness. You might remember the way they looked, the way they smelled, the way they gave you a sense of being loved. So a teacher, a good teacher, and I'm not saying I'm one, but a good teacher is transmitting something on what we call today meta level. The Kabbalah is meta level. So a good example of that would be, we're going to talk about Hasidism today. A Chassid, a disciple of the Rebbe, wants to learn what the rabbi has to teach, but he listens to the lessons but he wants to go home and follow the rabbi and watch the way the rabbi ties his shoes. There's even this off-color story about a guy who goes and hides under the Rebbe's bed so he can hear how the Rebbe, I'm not going to say make love, but how he is with his wife. The idea that you have a teacher, and then in the Hindu tradition, they use the word guru. So a guru is a holy teacher. They're human, and so for the Hasidim, that is the Rebbe. But anyway, I don't want to get onto the person, but the idea is that we learn Torah, we learn Mishnah, we learn Talmud, that's law, but we also got some level of higher learning. And again, all Kabbalah means is that which is given and received. Okay, let's have another reader. Thank you, Sam. Oh, okay. So I did this. This is the task. If I were doing this in a group, think of a person. So think of this person in your life. Does anybody want to volunteer to share such a person, a role model? Boy Scout leaders are good examples. I mean, camp counselors. No?
I can. My
Yeah, go ahead.
grandmother stands out. She was like a stay-at-home mom of 7 kids, and she wasn't always smart, and she would use like words incorrectly sometimes, but she just had such a presence. I think she really taught me like what it meant to be a strong feminine presence in a family,
Wow.
and being a provider from a feminine nature.
That was your whom?
My
Your mother?
grandmother.
Grandma. All right. So at this point, well, we'll come back to this. So okay, I see Amber. Oh no, Amber's with Rick. Okay, she's on two different systems. Let me introduce, or you may have already met, Pablo and Darla from Gainesville. Hi. And Herb, if Herb wants to turn his camera on, is and I don't single out Latinos, but Herb is from El Salvador, but is a city worker in LA. He's an engineer. And Pablo is Pablo. You were born in this country, though. Yeah. Oh, there's Herb.
Yeah.
Pablo, your family's from Puerto Rico. Now, before I get off on this, but I'm so fascinated by all the connections. Kabbalah has been a source of great interest among people from Spain and South America, including a well-known Argentinian author named Jorge Luis Borges, who wrote a book, who was not Jewish. He wrote a book called The Aleph in Spanish, which I read in Spanish in college when I was I couldn't understand it in Spanish, but even in English, it's pretty. So these were people who were always fascinated by it. But what's interesting is, I'm sorry, I don't put you on the spot, Pablo, and also some of you know Josh from our synagogue, Joshua Bandy. Josh was also not raised Jewish, but he came to, and last year he gave a talk in our class on what he knew from the Kabbalah of the Sfat period, the period in Safed. So Kabbalah is very attractive, and that's what Pablo said to me. I said, why are you interested in Judaism? He said, because of the Kabbalah.
Yeah, Kabbalah originally started off with Chabad.
With what?
Chabad. Ironically.
Oh, it's Chabad. You got to do the chotas. Chabad.
Chabad, yeah. And
Uh-huh.
I was reading the Tanya, and
Right.
they have the daily Torah and the Talmud, and
Sure.
so
Well, and that's,
yeah.
I'm sorry, guys. I keep on taking back. I want to have participation, but I'm just explaining why sometimes I talk so much to get over the material, and hopefully it puts things together for you. At the end, we're going to do a brief meditation with a candle. So to go back to the PowerPoint thingy. So where is it? Here we go. Let's do a song, actually. This is by Shlomo Carlebach. And it's just a nice, I do this sometimes during high holiday period. And you may have heard me sing it once or twice at services. And I'm not going to pick up the guitar right now, but it's return again, return again, return to the land of your soul. Return again, return again, return to the source of it all. There's a line missing there. Return to who you are, return to what you are, return to where you are born and reborn again, return again. So, again, I want to do, I'm a mystic too. I want to do Kabbalah. I don't want to just teach about it, but I have to return to the topic. So Shlomo wrote that song about Israel, but it's become, like many other songs like it, it's become kind of a song that gives this idea you're returning to your essence, not just, who we are. And I sing it at high holidays a lot. So here we go. Who wants to, this is again, just PowerPoint things. Who wants to read some of this? I already gave some of this over, but go ahead. From verb root, Pablo, do it, or Rick.
K,
Okay.
Q, BL, to receive tradition.
Mhm.
Ex- Example, lekadodi, literally, let us receive the face of Shabbat.
Right, I'm explaining here. So, lecha dodi likratka, likratka la, nikabla, let us receive the queen. Okay, nikabla. So receive. I'm sorry, and go ahead. Number 3. This is kind of funny,
In,
but it explains it better.
in modern secular Hebrew, Kabbalah is a receipt.
Right. May I have a receipt, please? Un recibo. So, man, I mean, give me something that says that I was here and I received this. So a little piece of paper. Okay, so there we go. Number 4.
An oral collection of esoteric hidden teachings. That which is received,
Mm-hmm.
the oral tradition passed from master to selected students, the receiving or the reception,
Right.
learning ways to attune oneself to be able to receive.
Okay, so thank you, Pablo. So I'm still dancing around the subject. Now, by the way, I like some of the graphics. Sometimes I find that this is looking like human to divine, so, or something like that. On the next slide here, we have a picture of an artist representation of the famous Stairway to Heaven, right? Jacob's dream. Jacob's down on the rocks and he sees, and this particular artist had it illustrated with letters as well. So I'm trying to be as Socratic as I can be, meaning Socrates would say, ask a question. What do you think? But we're going to go quickly. What do you think are some of the most, or the most supernatural, mystical, if you will, inexplicable event that happens in the Torah? And you, first thing somebody might say is, oh, the talking donkey, right? Bilam's talking donkey. Why would a donkey start talking like Mr. Ed? And then somebody else will say, oh, God talking to Abraham and Sarah, these people, how do they hear God's voice? The prophets. Then somebody will pipe up and say, okay, somebody put something in the chat. I want to see what they said. Somebody will say, the giving of the Torah. Okay, what? Yeah, Christina wrote Joseph Dreams, just like I thought. These are all very mystical and perhaps deep spiritual experiences. But the Kabbalists, or not just the Kabbalists, the rabbis themselves looked at Kabbalah becomes well known, or at least taught, in the Middle Ages. That's why we're doing it now. 12th century, 13th century Spain and France, but it was part of the biblical and rabbinic tradition. So what is the event? You're not going to get. Anybody?
Burning bush.
The burning bush. I knew you were going to say that. Okay, that's great too. I'm not going to disqualify anything. They're all incredible. The burning bush, the giving of the Torah, God's voice. How about the creation of the world?
Yes. Yep.
How about the idea? How does energy become matter? How does spirit become flesh? And so that was one of the issues that the early rabbis struggled with in Talmudic literature. Another example, which I'm going to get to, is that here? Yeah, come on the next slide, is going up on the chariot. Here's a picture. That's the chariot, but he's not on it yet. That's Elijah going to get on the chariot. So the mystics, again, of the rabbinic period, the rabbis of the Talmud, were obsessed with two things. I'll come back to that other slide. Two different, this is not different kinds of Kabbalah. We're going to get to that. But two different important acts. Bringing energy down by the act of creation. How does how I use the example of an electrical system. You step down transformers. How does divine energy move down into our world to create matter? And the second one, which is
Ezekiel.
What's that?
That was Ezekiel, or
that's Ezekiel.
Okay.
The Maaseh, called it Maaseh Bereshit, the act of creation, and Maaseh Merkava, the act of the chariot. The chariot meaning, how do you get there? How do you go to that level? How do you get there? Now, so let's go back to this one. Okay. So again, you'll have all this to look at. So again, I want to emphasize that they didn't call it Kabbalah until 11th, 12th century, but there were hints in biblical literature, even in the words themselves. So they would say, again, that example, in the Talmud, there are two rabbis who are discussing, I'm going to hit that in a minute. They're discussing how did this happen, and suddenly, a fire breaks out. So they were warned even then, don't get too esoteric, don't get too far out. And they would say, you may only teach the Maaseh Bereshit, the theories of creation, if you're grounded. By the way, here's another interesting. This is again a little bit of Talmud. The Bible, the Torah, begins with what letter? Anybody? Bereshit. Bereshit, in the beginning. The letter Bet is written. This is Talmud. This is not Kabbalah. The letter Bet looks like this, right? Mm-hmm. It looks like a parenthesis or bracket. And so they would say in Talmudic writings, they would say, don't speculate what happened before the Bet, right? God was here, God is, God was, God created the world. That's all you need to know, Joe. Don't ask me about what was God before God was God. What happened, the Big Bang. So they were even then a little bit concerned about people, getting too far out. So, but they did. These rabbis did do that. I can't cover all the material from the Talmudic period, but so as I said, it's discussed in Talmudic texts. It emerges or reemerges in Spain and France. It's at first the teaching was banned, not because of anything, later on there were things that happened that were unsavory, but just because people were not ready. And then it was finally, they removed the ban. I found the rabbi's name, but I'm not going to give it right now, after the exile from Spain, which I was talking about last week. So the important thing for us is that Isaac Luria in Tzfat took some of the theories of Kabbalah and reinterpreted them. Then we know that some of these ecstatics or unstable people began to misuse it. I talked last week about the false Messiah. And so it was shunned by people, by some rabbis because of that. And also, we're going to get to in 3 weeks, the Enlightenment, the reform and the beginning of the rationalists. Where I don't talk about angels, don't talk about all this weird stuff. All we need to know is science, or at least rationality. By the way, I told you last week, Rambam, Maimonides, was a rationalist, but he was also a philosopher. So you couldn't be a philosopher in Spain in those days without having a little bit of mystical interest. Ramban, who is not related, Nachmanides was a mystic. So, and I've talked about this in the 20th century. Um, a, uh, a teacher, a German man named Gershom Scholem, said, "I'm going to study Kabbalah not as a Kabbalist, but as an academic discipline." So there was Martin Buber, who studied Hasidism, and there was Scholem, who studied Kabbalah. And he read the Kabbalistic books, but as an academic exercise. And the best book, I have it at the end of the book, at the end of the slideshow, best book on that is Major Trends in Jewish Mysticism. It is not light, but at least you can get some of this. Today, you can find it all on, Wiki and of course my friend Ted. So, and I put in the chat a good hour-long video by a current teacher. Again, this is not, I got to distinguish between Kabbalists who study and practice and use Kabbalah, and we're going to get to that in a minute, and those who actually are Hasidim Kabbalists in Israel or in America, and they say, this is what I do. This is their major way of being a Jew. But there's a difference between those and people who study it and learn it, just like you would learn history. Am I an atomic physicist who's making an atomic bomb, or who's trying to split the atom or do something, or am I just a teacher about it? So Herschel Matt was a conservative rabbi. I studied with him in rabbinical school, and his son, Daniel Matt, is a professor. He's about a little younger than me, 60 or so, and he's a professor at a graduate school of theology in Berkeley. So Herschel Matt is considered today to be, I'm not saying he's not a Kabbalist, but he's an authority on Kabbalah. If you read, and he has a book, very, very straightforward book called The Essential Kabbalah. I'm going to get in the end, I'm going to talk about what not to read or who not to look for. In Israel, there's Moshe Idel, another great teacher. So it's become but my point here is, in this line here, Kabbalah has once again become respectable to learn, at least to be informed, and that's why you're learning it from me. Now, another topic, which I can't get into today, but we'll get into it maybe towards the end of the class. Why does Kabbalah emerge once again from my Rebbe, Reb Zalman, and other people? And again, all the books you can find at Barnes & Noble and Amazon, both Jewish and non-Jewish. And we'll get to that in a minute, why, but it does. In the 60s, you guys know I'm an old guy, Woodstock, psychedelics, meditation, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, the Beatles. Everybody became interested in the 60s not everybody, but a certain group of people became interested in transcendental work, and so it renewed itself. By the way, one of the things, and I probably stopped to share, one of the things that's very interesting about Scholem is he says Kabbalah, because he's an academic, he says Kabbalah was a subterranean tradition. What does subterranean mean? It's under the surface. Everybody, and the same thing as I said about the Hindus, everybody's just do this prayer, just keep kosher, just do this ritual. I can give you a little explanation, but don't get into it so much. But Kabbalah was under the surface. And what Scholem says is, every once in a while, every few hundred years, when there's a tragedy, when there's a crisis, when there is suffering, when the world seems to have no meaning, some people start looking towards Kabbalistic teachings for wisdom. Now, I've talked about it. What is it? Okay, so let me go back to the slides. I'm hoping to ask questions in a minute. So, um, well, one of the things I mentioned, the bringing energy down, bringing energy up. What they did, and you know this already because you've heard this, prophecy was officially canceled by the rabbis in the Talmudic period. It was too dangerous. Look, we got the Jesus guy, we got these other guys, all these Messiah people, just study, and pray. And, don't give me this prophetic stuff. Even though prophets were legitimate, but they wanted to make them respectable. So what took its place? What took its place? The Kabbalistic teachings that were even taught to the individual students and rabbis took its place. By the way, again, I like English meanings. Esoteric means don't teach. Something esoteric is available. Teach it. It's not easy, but it's taught. Esoteric means hidden. So, hi, Moshe, you're my favorite student. I want you to come over to my house and we're going to sit and we're going to look at the story of creation. And I'm going to give you a very deep understanding of what it really means. So that is the kind of material. All right. Well, I guess I'll go back for a minute because Pablo was exposed to this, and so was where's Emily? She didn't make it tonight. I'm not Emily. I'm sorry, Jamie. Jamie, you don't look at each other at all. I'm just going too fast here. Well, Jamie's exposure was to Hermetic Kabbalah. Hermetic is the New Age stuff that is exposed. And what happened was there were certain Kabbalists in the 1700s that taught or learned with other Christians and other mystics. So there was Aleister Crowley and some other folks. And so nowadays, like I say, you can find those books. Now, what I want to talk about in a minute is, well, we'll come back to that. Here, number 3, I talk about the two issues. How does a person get united with God? How does God's energy come down? So you could break the Kabbalah, not break it, but there are 3 streams of Kabbalah today. What did I miss? New message. Yes. No, Christina, Hermetic stuff. Well, I'll get to that in a minute. That's a good question. The Kabbalah Center. Well, I'll get to it in a minute. Okay. Theosophical or theoretical Kabbalah seeks to understand and describe the divine realm through mythical and psychological understandings, symbols. And that is what most influenced Hasidism and today. And it is what most people know and I'm going to teach some basics now of Kabbalah. There's another kind of mysticism, and it was very common and still is practiced, and that is meditative or ecstatic. Remember I talked about the Sufis. The meditative or the ecstatic Kabbalist seeks to, I got to watch my hand motions. They want to go to God. They want to be with God. So just like the Sufis have chanting, there is a tradition of ecstatic Kabbalah. It was pretty much part of the teachings of Abraham Abulafia, who was a Spanish mystic, Isaac the Blind, who was a German mystic, and it's still practiced today, but with caution, right? And I could do it, and I can do some chanting. That's why I use chanting. The third type, and that's what we're getting to for the people who've been exposed to the Kabbalah Center, there is within Kabbalistic teachings magical, but it's called practical. Why is it called practical? Because it's how to do something. How do you make this happen? How do you make that happen? It was kind of white magic. And it was and is still part of a philosophy by a rabbi named Yehuda Ashlag. So Ashlag had students, and one of his students, Christina, was Rabbi Berg. Some of you have heard of what's Berg's first name? The sons of Yehuda Berg, but I can't remember. And Karen, I saw it. Anyway, the Kabbalah Center, and they spell it center with the British spelling. Kabbalah Center is shunned by most mainstream rabbis and Kabbalists alike today, because what it's done is it's taken this practical Kabbalah and turned it into a cult, a commercial enterprise. It's, KabbalahCenter.com. And the Berg family, I'm sorry, I don't like to do Lashon Hara. That means, sound gossipy. The Kabbalah centers all over the world take people's naivete and need for support, and they turned it into a business enterprise. You don't have to know anything. Just buy this book for $400 and keep it in your house. It'll bring you good luck. That may be partly true, or, I talk about how you should make sure your mezuzahs are kosher and so on. But so we have ours and they have theirs. The Hermetics and the neo-pagans, I'm not saying they're all bad. I have read the works of Crowley and some of the Hermetics. I have read. I know how to do tarot. I had a girlfriend who was into this stuff, and I think it's really neat. But it's not the difference. That's a key thing. I said this to Jamie and Devin over dinner a couple of weeks ago. The major difference between the Hermetics and the Jews is God is in control. Hashem is in charge. Hashem put the stars in the sky. We can look at the stars. We can try to divine God's wisdom or what might happen, but at no time do they ever say, I have the power. And so, yes, so what happened, to answer Christina's query, a lot of people who were not Jewish got influenced. I had another, well, she wasn't a girlfriend, but was a friend who I studied with, and she invited me, she converted, and then she invited me to go with her to the Kabbalah Center for a Pesach Seder. I had a good time. I enjoyed the Seder, but I found the people to be totally ignorant, except for the 4 Israelis that were running it, because they knew the symbolism, and they would just put stuff on the slides and say, do this, do this, do this. It was not deep. So that's my problem. But here we go. Just eventually, sometimes if you study something, you might get further. Look at Pablo. He's taking it deeper. So my message to you is, first study Judaism and Bible and Torah, and some Talmud at least. All right, so what is it? Well, here's a couple of sources. In the, we don't know exactly when, 4th to 10th century, a book appeared. I mentioned the Practical Kabbalah. It was called Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Formation. And it was this, how did God do it? What were, how did God create this and this and this? And I'll talk about Rabbi, the Golem, hopefully tonight. So the Sefer Yetzirah purports to be a speculative book on how God created the world through the letters of the alphabet. And it's very deep and beautiful, and you can buy it today, but I advise, I'm not going to say you're going to go crazy, but it's going to be beyond most of our understanding. Okay, so but it existed, or something like it existed, in the rabbinic period. Another book that appeared in the 10th or 13th century was the first book analyzing the Sephirot, which we're going to get to, the different orbs or energies of God. But the major book that most people know of and have heard of is the Zohar. And here's the significant thing. I watched the clock. Where's my phone? Oh my God, we're not that bad, 7:43. In 1290 or so, in the 13th century, a book appears called the Zohar, which means the radiance. Notice they all have titles that have to do with enlightenment. Book of brightness, splendor, radiance. One of my inmates at the prison decided to call herself Zohara Bina. So Zohar for a man, Zohara for a woman is a beautiful mystical name. Splendor. Who wouldn't want a name like that? Radiance. And by the way, she became suitable for parole. Isn't that amazing? But got a little journey to go through. So what Zohar is and was, and I have it, is a multi-volume commentary, just like Midrash. I said that Midrash is commentaries on the Torah portions, but what Zohar does is it says everything you thought you knew is way beyond that. And it became an instant hit. So much so that Jews in Yemen had to keep copies of it, and so it was as important for some people as the Talmud had been. Now, with all of these books, I'm differentiating between the traditionalists and the scholars. The traditionalists will say, "Oh, Adam had the book of the Yetzirah, and Abraham studied with Melchizedek." And I'm sorry, I'm not going to say something disrespectful like it's BS, but come on, I'm not going to sell you real estate on the moon. But what is interesting is that maybe they're right to some extent. Maybe ancient people knew things that we did not know. The same thing's true of India. So it became common, as I talked about last 2 weeks ago, to do something which, not to be false, not to sell books, but to respect it and say, so I never wrote this. It was written by so-and-so. I just found a manuscript. So what Moses de Leon does is he says, Shimon Bar Yochai wrote the Zohar in the 2nd century CE. There are scholars today that have found his books, his diaries, and he's even talking to his wife saying, honey, I'm working on this new book, So then there was another book called Tikkunei Zohar, which were separately combined. So I'm going to read one of those. Okay, so those are the 3 types of mystics, or the theoretical, I guess that's me, the meditative, that's sometimes me, and the practical, rarely me. And if you meet a person who says, I'm a practical Kabbalist, be cautious. That's all I can say. Next, as I mentioned, this is so there was this earlier material, 10th century, 11th century, France, Spain, and they're just, like I said last week, they're sitting around discussing things. Then crash, this horrible disruption of the Spanish expulsion, and Luria, they call him Ari Zal. Zal means the Ari of blessed messing. This Z-A-L means a blessed blessed memory. You use that in Zion Lamed in Hebrew. And I was mistaken last week. Please forgive me. I said Moses Cordovero wrote down Luria's teachings. That was absolutely incorrect because I hadn't checked my notes. Cordovero was a contemporary and also wrote some books, including a book called The Palm Tree of Devorah, but he did not write about Luria. Chaim Vital was his main secretary, and so the book is called Eitz Chaim. It's not really available in its pure form today. And as I told you, they decided that they were not content to just study. They were practical Kabbalists in that sense. They said, let us bring back the Shekhinah. We're going to get to that in a moment. What is the Shekhinah? Well, the divine feminine presence, the essence, the immanent, the protecting presence. And so they felt this, and that's why Alkabetz wrote the Lecha Dodi, which we still sing today. And you'll notice when I lead services, I'll say, I say turn towards the door, bow. I once led services up in Vancouver, and it was cold. And I said, everybody get up and go to the door. And we went outside and sang Lecha Dodi to, and to the bride. And I used to do it with the women at the prison too. Just get up, everybody get up. And it's a beautiful idea that you're actually saying, hi, queen, come on in. So these guys also, these rabbis also created the Tu B'Shvat Seder, which we will have in a few weeks. It is one of the ways in which we celebrate that holiday for the trees today. Another way, of course, is planting trees, ecological consciousness, and so on. So my question is, even though these guys were a bit, I don't want to say Meshuggah, they were out there. Meshuggah's loco. They were a bit out there, and they were. It was only 30 years that this community existed. But maybe this is 16th century. Maybe that messianic longing planted the seeds for the later return to Israel. So, all right. So that we have some of those now. Here are some very basic teachings from Loria. Well, actually, let me go to this first. Because this is a little easier. And because most people go to the Tree of Life. It is long, esoteric, and not easy to comprehend. So I'm going to impart to you first the idea of four worlds. You live, I live, we live in the world of the material world, right? And here's some of my best examples. I play a guitar. It is made out of wood. Wood is a living thing. It was once a living thing, but it is now a physical thing. So there's a physical nature to the wood. There's a physical nature to my body. I breathe, I eat, I defecate, and so on. Okay. But I also have a soul, but there are 5 levels of the soul in Kabbalah. This is before we get to the tree of life. And these 4, let's say 4 or 5, these levels of the soul correspond to our feelings about our lives. And when we get to it in 2 weeks, also death, the journey that one goes through, right, Emily, with dying. I'm not saying you have to believe in this, but when a person dies, their body dies, and then their energy dies. So we have these levels. So this is very loose and very glib. So the 3 levels that we're aware of are nefesh, ruach, and neshama, all of which mean different words for breath. The nefesh could be called the lower soul, or the physical, or the animal soul, or maybe you call it the bioenergy. I'm giving words from other traditions, the chi, the prana, Dr. McCoy's tricorder readings, So it is in the Hindu tradition, the Vedic tradition, it's the Manipura chakra, the solar plexus. So I'm not saying this is where it's located, but it's the energy that says, I'm alive. I have this, so is this person alive or dead? Their chi is there. So that's nefesh. Nefesh means the breathing as well. Ruach, I know this is a lot to take in. Ruach is the spirit, the psyche, the emotional. So these are physical, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual. There you go. This is also part of Jung. You sure may have heard of these. So we are doing, we are feeling, we are knowing, and we are being. So ruach which means wind or spirit, is the emotional self. He was in the room a minute ago. I could still feel him, right? Or even somebody's essence, or their scent, or their, cologne. It's also the person's heart. You say, I feel you. I feel you. So that would be the word psyche in the Greek. Now, there is a third level going up the tree. The third level is called neshama. And you will say, people say, he's a good neshama, right? Nobody in Kabbalistic teachings is totally evil. Even if they're a pain in the neck and they grate on you, or their ruach is all messed up, they have a super soul that is at least in touch with the divine. And that could be called the crown chakra, right? But for a lot of people, it's covered over with a lot of crap, you know. So we are aware of our neshama sometimes. Maybe we're aware of it when we are meditating or praying or making love or um, in deep, deep sleep. Maybe that's where our soul goes, right? So the neshama is considered to be residing in the um, the I'd call it dantian. I can't remember the word. That's Chinese. What is this? Pineal gland, the pineal gland. So we have four glands here. We have, or three glands. We have the solar plexus area. The heart has the thymus, the pineal gland, and even above that, there's an awareness of the divine force itself, chaya, life. And that's what I'm going to do in a minute at the end of the class. Make sure I have enough time for a middle meditation on the candle. And then there's the higher plane that we're not even aware of, which I could say, you know, this is a discussion I had a long time ago with one of my friends, co-visionaries, Ariella. She said, I want to be united with God. I said, you cannot be one with God. We only do that when we die. But you can be close to God. And that's what the Hasidim did. Dveikut, they called it, clinging to to God. So Yechida, so if I could put it this way, the nefesh is the bioenergetic soul, the emotional soul. You look at somebody as this, and neshama is not intellect, even though I'm pointing to my mind. It's more like, don't I know you from somewhere, right? Spock does the mind meld. We are one, you know. So these three we are aware of sometimes. Chaya is above that, and Yechida is the unity with all of the souls, the divine soul. And we'll get into that somewhat with the journey of the afterlife. So where do those fit on this tree? Oh, we'll get to this. All right, so am I going too fast or am I getting too complicated? All right, it's heavy stuff. What Luria did was he took the earlier teachings, and this little diagram is supposed to be what it might have looked like, what the Big Bang looked like. And it looks suspiciously like an ovum, doesn't it? Right? So here is the world, and here is the divine spark, and the divine spark shoots through, but it breaks the vessels. So instead of using, and I urge you to watch Danny Matt, I just watched a little half of it, and he says, in the Bible, in the Torah, and in Talmudic literature, God is. We talk to God. We pray to God. God says, God feels, God sees. The Kabbalists would say that's too anthropomorphic. Even though they use anthropomorphic stuff, they would say God is not something you can define. It is unknowable. So they use a term Ein Sof, and Ein Sof is at the top of the tree. But in the process to create the world, the Ein Sof, which was not God, but the Ein Sof was the divine part of God, shot this energy down into the world. Oh, Rick's back. Okay, something happened. But what Luria does, this is largely to explain evil. We talked about this last week. How does evil happen? Oh, it was those horrible Romans. It was those horrible Catholics. It was those Cossacks who attacked us. The Kabbalist would say the world is made in such a way so that these vessels could not contain the divine light completely, and so the vessels broke, and that's what this is. And each one of us is a divine vessel, trying to, find God. And within each one of us, this is again Luria, but it's also becomes part of the Hasidic tradition. We contain a nitzotz, and nitzotz means a spark. And that sounds weird after the horrible events of the sparks in California. Fire can be a good thing or a bad thing. So the evil exists, according to Luria, because klipot, which are shells, if you can imagine, like the rind of a watermelon, covers the light. So you could say in Kabbalistic terms, this person, I can see their humanity, their goodness, but boy, have they got some heavy klipot to get through. I mean, a person who is just, or even not just a person, but our own lives. So, and I'll get to this with somewhat with Hasidism. What he did is that humans must repair the world through mitzvot, through healing, through personal growth. This is common in all mystical traditions. As below, so above. So when I light candles, I'm just lighting a candle. I'm saying blessings for Shabbat. Isn't that nice? No, the Kabbalists would say, bring the energy of the intention into that. And so there is this, how do I want to put this? Danny Matt said it well the other day. In the traditional mind view, or Kabbalah, traditional Talmudic or rabbinic view, God doesn't need us. We need God. I like that. God is just there. But the Kabbalist says, no, God needs you. Isn't that cool? God, Hashem needs us to be partners in this growth, in this spiritual change. That's why the word renewal seems to be apt. All right, so those are some of the traditions. Now, very briefly, one other thing that I'll talk about, which we'll maybe get to next time, is reincarnation. And again, people are going to say, what is it there? Is it not there? Yes, there was a tradition of Gilgul HaNefesh, and today it's common for Hasidic Jews to talk about it, and that's one of the things about the Savat community is they believed that their rabbis were reincarnations of the rabbis from the 2nd century, some of them. So you might ask, does some of this come over from India? Maybe yes, maybe no. Maybe some of it was there in the mystical traditions of the Greeks as well. There is also the Silk Road. I'm not saying that somebody went to India, but people got ideas. So according to Hasidism, you only reincarnate as another light, as another being, in order to have growth to finish something you didn't finish in this lifetime. So we'll get to that maybe in a few weeks. All right, so we got Nefesh. So very briefly, so this is actually, yeah, let's do this. Somebody want to read this? This is from the Tikkunei Zohar. This is found in, if you have, oh, I'm sorry, Rick, you had a hand up. What? Turn, your mute's on. Rick, can't hear you.
Okay.
Sorry, long day. You spent all the time putting that stuff in chat, but the moment I got disconnected, I lost it all, and I don't have it on the computer. So I think maybe if you can.
I'll resend everything. I mean, it's all in the email from last week, almost all of it.
Okay.
All right,
Then that's
fine. Why don't you, since you were feeling out of it, why don't
Elijah
open Elijah? Now,
Elijah.
This is the real Elijah, but it's made up, of course. But they read this. It's not famous. It's not read that, but this gives you an idea of why the tree of life developed. Go ahead.
Elijah opened, Master of the worlds, you are one, but not in the manner of counting. You are higher than the high, concealed from the concealed. No thought grasps you at all. It is you who generated 10 adornments, called by us the 10
Sefirot.
Sefirot,
Right.
by which concealed at unrevealed worlds are conducted and revealed worlds. In them you conceal yourself from human beings, while you are the one who binds and unites them.
Okay, I thought that would be helpful, but thank you, but it only makes it, more murky. These 10 Sefirot, the next page, proceed in order. Now, I'm not going to go through them all, but here, this is what I was talking about. Now, if you picture this, I have other slides, picture this as your body, okay? Ein Sof is above the head, and this is, Zalman taught this way, and I will too. You have a thought, you picture the thought, and that is on the right side of the brain, and it is up here, chokhmah, meaning with wisdom. You just know it. I don't know why, but I know it. All right. But then you go to the left brain, and the left brain analyzes and says, this is how you do the math problem. Did you ever know people like that who just know the answer? So these are this upper part is symbolized or symbolizes God's brain, if you want to call it. All of this is God, and all of this is us, and all of this is my body, and there are diagrams of this as body. All right, this is called Adam HaKadmon. Now you got to turn yourself off. Okay, he was off still on. So anyway, the good way to explain Keter is I know it. I get the thought. I feel it over here. I discern it. I decide. I explain. What is this compared to? Bina. Oh, I had a previous experience like this, and then this is this is the tree of life. How God created the world. So first day, let there be light. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm going to go to here. First day, chesed, let there be light. Light, 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 light. Have some more light. Have some more light. There's plenty of light. I got so much more. You don't need to worry. There's one. So in the color associated with chesed or loving kindness is purple or ultraviolet. That would be, chesed would be like the mother gives the milk to the baby. The mother knows when the baby needs the milk. Gevura, and ironically, this side of the tree is male, and this side of the tree is female. But Gevura is limits, shelter, caring. Also, Gevura means also justice. So you have the right breast or the right side of the body is loving kindness. The left side of the body is justice. What do you need to balance those? You need the heart, and that brings us to Tiferet. And again, the Hermetics will say Tifareth. I always know what I'm dealing with when they spell it differently. So Tiferet is the color is associated with is kind of I'm sorry. This is ultraviolet, blue. Tiferet is sometimes purple and sometimes no color at all, but often it is associated with kind of green. And Tiferet is the heart, but notice that you have, I love you. Guy comes to you and says, there you go. He's got it all written out. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And that's what people do. And also, frankly, there's much more to this, as Pablo can tell you. There are also names of God associated with each of these Sefirot or attributes. They're names of God. Their names are numbers. There are planets. associated with them. Anyway, the way I explain it is, person comes to you and they say, I need $5,000, or I need $1,000, I need $10. Sure, Bob, here's 10, here's 20, here's 100. Next day, somebody else comes to you, or you say, gee, what did I do? I gave that money away to him. That would be gevura, limits. And every parent knows, and any good therapist, Emily, knows that you have to set limits. But those two together, there's a triangle effect going on. There's a triangle here, the balance of the crown with the right brain and the left brain, and loving kindness with balance and with limits and balance. Tiferet is considered the center of compassion. Now, when we say compassion, most people think that means like love. It means I feel you and I give it to you. Rick, another hand, or is that the same hand? Oh, we'll try to come back. So Tiferet is centered. Tiferet is where you sit when you sit with a therapist, a rabbi, a priest, a very good friend, and they just listen compassionately. That's why it's associated with the heart. So it's not to be confused with chesed, which is pure, absolute love, unquieting love. Now we come down to these three very quickly: right kidney, left kidney, genitals, and feet. Okay, they're just parts of the body, but what is Netzach? Netzach is, wow, yes, I can do this, I can do that. I'll get back to the days of creation in a minute. Hod says, wait a minute, you better organize yourself. Some people, myself included, have a little too much Netzach. They're creative. They got to get organized. So a person who has too much Netzach and not enough Hod will never write the term paper. All right. Yesod is mysterious because Yesod is the place from which we give birth, not just the woman or the man, but also humanity. I'll come back to that in a minute. First day, let there be light. Second day, let there be a division between the sea and the earth, and it's color blue. Third day, let there be plants, green. So notice how this is going down. These are called the active sefirot, whereas these are beyond our comprehension most of the time. And then Netzach, fourth day, stars, moons, lights, all the stars in the heavens. And also this is when the beginnings of, by the way, Tiferet is also the beginnings of plants, green. Netzach is the beginnings of fish and fowl, right? So its color is orange, the color of green, of yolks. Sorry, I said green by accident. Hod is organizing all that life. Hod is, you are not a toad, you are a pigeon. So it is the organization, remember, of Netzach and Hod. Netzach and Hod, Zalman used to say, are like the Bobbsey twins. You need both to get them done. So again, a Netzach, a person might sit down and say, I could be a concert pianist. Well, first you got to study piano. All right, then we come to Yesod, and I say this is very brief. Yesod can be, every Sephirah can have a dark side if we're not careful. Chesed can be codependent. Gevura can be militaristic. Netzach can be super creative, right? Without any organization. Yesod is beautiful in birth, but you know what? That's where people become sex addicts as well. That's where people get stuck. That's where people get ulcers because they are not able to complete the process. What is this then? I said, day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What happens on day 7? 6 is Shabbat. And day 7, Malchut, is also Shekhinah, the coming into the world. And Malchut is when it means kingdom. Malchut is also when we do Shabbat, when we relax. So I think I've done most of this slide. All right, take this on your own because it would be too much for tonight. Maybe we'll do another lesson. These are all of the tree of life. I left out da'at on purpose because da'at is an invisible or theoretical sephirah. It is the throat chakra. It is where we experience these three. Is that making sense? I hope. And they're over here, these are the holidays associated with it. These are the polarities, male, female, male, female, male, female. All right. And the archetypes of the different
Yes.
patriarchs and matriarchs, the body parts. Isn't that incredible? Okay. So I wish I had time. I would do a whole class. I mean, not tonight. Now, let's come back to the Messiah business. I want to show you another slide and see if I can go all the way up to the beginning where I put it in. Did I? No, I didn't. I did not put it in the chat. So what is Shekhinah? I sent it to you. What is Shekhinah? What is Shekhinah?
Feminine.
Yes, and I mean everything, public good. Everything has more meanings than just the simple meanings. The short version is when they were going, huh?
Dwelling.
The dwelling, the indwelling place, the indwelling God is within you. Remember, I said before, the Talmudic or the classic rabbinic is we pray out there, out there, out there. Shekhinah is with you, in you, over you, upon you. So when this is again, a lot of things come together. When they lived in the when they were in the desert, it said God said, "Build me a mishkan that I may dwell in it." Not don't put an idol in there. There's nothing in there. Right? They put the Ten Commandments in there. So they began this idea that God is with us. And the Philistines grabbed the ark, and then they got sick. So the ark was symbolic of that. So later on, they would say that the Shekhinah, the presence, dwelled in the temple. And we have graphic, what do I want to say, illustrations, if you will, or feelings of that. When Isaiah is in the temple and he sees the smoke rising and he says, "Holy, holy, holy is Lord of hosts." So they have feelings like this. So what happens when the temple is destroyed? Well, several things. One is what happens to God? God goes with us. But they began to, this is again part of Kabbalah, God is not male, God is not female, but God is both. So Shekhinah is, if you will, and remember, we don't want to say God is many or God is 10 or God is the Sephirot are another answer to the idolatry. Oh boy, that's a Shekhinah right there, a big puppy. Yeah. And I remind me that somebody's going to ask, do animals have neshamas? And I have an answer on that. So when these tragedies happened, they began to say the Shekhinah goes with us. And there were, I talked about this, there were also very horrible graphic things that happened to women. Women carrying their babies as they were starving, women, this all happened with October 7th. So Rachel became a symbol of that. So what they did, what the Kabbalists did, is they said, very beautiful, and this has to do with the God business as well. We have one God, one God, one God. There's no Zeus and Hera. There's no Aphrodite and Apollo, this other stuff. But what happens? We still have to have a certain amount of color to the stories, and that's what Midrash did as well. So the Kabbalistic teaching says the reason why exiles happen is because God is looking for his feminine half. And sometimes it's a princess, sometimes it's a bird. These are all images, not literal. And so you can see hints of this in the Christian belief about the Holy Spirit. There you go, right? And early Christians, I'm not saying it's the same, but early Christians did have an idea of, God, goddess. So, when I've been with pagans, they've also talked about goddess. So that is the Jewish goddess, Shekhinah. But it's not feminine, it's not her, but how do I explain this? I mean, no, God has no gender, right? I'll say this over and over again. But we have, look at these beautiful, I got two couples here, three couples if I count all of you. All these beautiful couples, you found your other half. Give me a blessing that soon I should meet my beloved. All right, because I need a polarity. So that is God's polarity, the Shekhinah. The other thing about Shekhinah that's really important for Luria and those Kabbalists is they literally say, we can't touch the Ein Sof, but we can talk to the presence, the divine presence, Shekhinah. And then finally, as I pointed out in one of the slides, the modern feminists, my colleagues, and I include myself among them, have latched onto that because for so many centuries we used male God language. It's destructive. It's idolatrous. It's not helpful to say God, he. It's not that much better to say God, she. So you can say God, he, she. We're all bigender. We're all non-binaries. I'll open for a question on that if anybody wants to, hit me on the head.
No, it's the male and female energy.
The male and female energy, yin and yang, precisely.
The receiving and the giving, we both have that.
Receiving. Thank you, dude. You're going to be quite a great part of the community if you already got that. All right, very briefly, and then I want to do a meditation. We got 8:20. Maybe we'll do Hasidism in a coming week, but very briefly, it still hadn't. Well, I mentioned the Sabbatean heresy, right? That's from last week, and so all this crisis, and the expulsion, and then the false messiahs and the hopes dashed, sort of said, don't talk about this stuff. It's horrible. It's scary. But along comes a very humble young man, and the title was Baal Shem. What Baal Shem meant, somebody who could be a healer, a teacher, a guide, who knew herbs. They weren't scary. They didn't claim to be the Messiah. And so Israel ben Eliezer, you read stories about him. He was a very simple, poor kid, but he didn't really, again, just like Luria, he didn't write down anything. People wrote down his material, and he spread the teachings on the Lurianic Kabbalah, but he adapted. What's significant about him is he adapted his teachings for the poor, the simple, and the working class. And his message was, okay, we're not going to look at all these diagrams and this is this and this. That's going to boggle their mind. What do you need? What do you need to know, Moshe? Pray. Why? Because when you pray, God is happy. When you light candles. So the Hasidim emphasized joy, spontaneity. The word Hasid you already encountered because there was a group of Jews during the Hasmonean rebellion against the Greeks that called themselves Hasidim. They just meant righteous people. And there were German Jews there were Hasidei Ashkenaz, the pious people so Hasid just means pious. So what happened is, and there's a very brief here, is over the next few generations, this role of the Rebbe became a bit too, shall we say, overdone. And the next generation of the Rebbes, because people were still hungry and ignorant, and so people became dynasties, and they would put the Rebbe in a coach and throw money at them, and this became, and also they were still quite ignorant, and so the Chabad, believe it or not, Chabad was a reaction to the earlier generations of Hasidim, in which they said, we need to bring back scholarship. And so today, I mean, you hear people talk about Rebbe Menachem Mendel Schneerson. He was not a wonder worker. He never claimed to be. He was just a very good rabbi. Okay, so I did this in High Holidays, so I did Avinu Malkeinu. This is a beautiful song by Zalman. Maybe we'll do it next week. And here is, I sent this all to you. Here is a very partial list of some Kabbalah books on Kabbalah. I mentioned Kurzweil. It is about the Kabbalah with some sources. If you want to see the sources, Danny Matt, who I just mentioned, is very good. He explains each source with notes. Another book that a lot of us have studied is a beautiful man named David Cooper. May he rest in peace. David used to teach meditation, and he has a book that is pretty accessible called God is a Verb. These would be the popular ones. If you want to get with some more academic stuff, but it's not too terrible, Major Trends by Sholem and OKS on Kabbalah and its mysticism. Believe it or not, folks, you can learn a lot from the Wikipedia article. And Wiki is good. And I'm saying it for the umpteenth time. Subscribe to My Jewish Learning and get the weekly message. This last week was on Shekhinah, right? What does it mean? Another one was, why do Jews, I'm not going to discuss it, but why do some Jews write G-D? So do your own reading. Anyway, another trend that I mentioned is the feminist side, and that is many different teachers, including Lynn Gottlieb, contemporary of mine, and Estelle Frankel, also still living, and she is a therapist, and she wrote a book using the Sefirot for therapy, Emily. Yeah, there you go. All right. I want to end by, we don't have time to do a long meditation, but I brought a candle, and let's see if we can, just to illustrate, this is without the lights off, it's not going to be as much fun. And in the past, when I've done this, I've actually done a whole meditation. Think of the candle. This is from a passage which you will find in Danny Matt's Essential Kabbalah. Let me see if, are you watching? You're able to see me, right? Okay, view. Well, I'm going to set it up so I'm, oh, okay. For some reason, I'm not, I'm highlighted, but I've got Darla and Pablo highlighted. All right, who you got? What are you guys looking at? You're looking at me? All right, you don't have to look at me. Okay, so here is the candle. Multi-speaker. Let's do gallery. No, let's do multi-speaker. That's better. Okay, no, but oh, there it is. It wasn't there. All right, so I see if I can move it down. A candle has different levels, and those levels are the four worlds. What is the base of the candle? The base is the base of the soul, right? I will turn off one light here. That's, yeah, get a little bit more mystical. And you could do this at home. You could turn on a candle or Shabbat candles when you light candles at home. Put on a little incense if you like, and meditate. But watch what I'm going to show you. So is the body. That's the holder, or you could say the body is the candle. What is running through the candle? In the middle of the candle is the wick. What is running through our body? The spinal column, the lamed in the tree of life. The letter lamed is like connecting the upper and lower worlds. And that lamed extends all the way up in the word shalom, for example, all the way up to the top of the head. So what do we have in the flame? Again, it's hard to see this. Do you ever notice that in a flame, you have the wick and the dark part of the flame, and then the light part of the flame, and then the aura around it. So those are the levels of the soul. The body, the dark part of the wick is the ruach. The lightest part, the white, is the neshama, and the chaya and yichida is the higher levels. So I'm going to end with this thought, again, you probably heard this if you hang around any kind of, I'm sorry that, there's Jamie. If you hang around anybody that's a little new age, any of your friends or people or you go to a massage therapist or somebody, we are not our bodies. We think we are. It's hard for me because I love my physical self. When I do yoga or when I work out or when I meditate, I, for a moment, experience myself not as a human doing, but as a human being. And that is what I think Kabbalah is here to teach us, that we are vessels of divinity. I sound like I'm really trying to be a mystic right now, but are you understanding the theme I'm getting across? That I look at your body and I can't help but see, this outer garment, but the inner garment is what is really important. So I mentioned we'll talk about life and death, and some of you have been through losses of loved ones. Because I'm not saying I was super wise or anything, but because I was doing healing work, I became very sensitized when my father was dying. My father and I were close, and it just happened. I think I may have mentioned this, but it happened that my mom called me. I was in LA or Long Beach. They were in San Diego, and she said, "You got to come to the hospital. He's not long. He was dying of pulmonary fibrosis." And when I got there to the hospital, overlooking beautiful La Jolla, the beach and everything, it had a room right there with a window, and she left. And it was Saturday afternoon, Shabbat afternoon. I know I drove on Shabbat. And she went home, and he died. He was on oxygen. He had no response. He was alive, but he was on a breather because that's what they do. And she held his hand, she kissed him, and he was still warm. You know how that is. And I kid you not, I swear, I felt my father's soul leave his body, and I imagined waft out over the ocean. And I told my mother and my sister this, they said, "Yeah, du bist am sugar," So, what are you smoking, Moshe? And it also happened that since I didn't know what else to do, I prayed. It was just me and him. And the staff knew he was going. So they did whatever they could to make him comfortable. And I went, to the window, which happened to be, no, I think the window was west, so I was facing east. So I davened afternoon service, mincha, and every prayer I read, every psalm I read became a psalm about Dad, a message there. So I offer that to you just because, there is much more. It's 8:32. There's much more to us than our physical selves. All right, I'm taking some thoughts, questions. We got a very courageous man over here, Rick, with you probably had to develop a sense of spirituality because of your physical challenges. I don't want to overplay them, but Herb also, my buddy Herb out there in California, went to El Salvador, dealt with his mother's death. Anybody want to contribute anybody want to be a Kabbalist for a moment? Pablo?
Yeah, we've been studying Kabbalah for a while, so we're pretty well versed in the Zohar and other books like the Sefer Ezra HaMelech. So we've been, it's helped us a lot to really connect with the mystical side of the Torah.
Okay. Well, I'll beat you up tomorrow. I'm meeting with you guys tomorrow, right?
But
Yeah.
it also,
Go ahead.
But
I would say that it helped a lot when my dad passed away too, just in
Mhm.
September. Learning Kabbalah, I was learning Kabbalah. We were like really right in the middle of learning about it when he
Mhm.
passed away, and it helped. I think it helped a lot with the grieving process and just kind of understanding what happens to his soul.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so tempted whenever I say something that's mystical, I feel like I'm okay because I'm the teacher. If somebody else says something mystical, I always have I'm not saying you're wrong. I just always feel like, but remember, be careful. Don't go. There's the story as I included in last week's teaching, and this week as well. 4 rabbis go out into Pardes, right?
Yeah.
And they meaning they explore mysticism. One goes crazy, one dies, one becomes an apostate, pagan, whatever, leaves Judaism, and the fourth, only Rabbi Akiva, emerged unscathed. So my only note is always remember that's why we have Hasidism, or a certain amount of respect for the mystical traditions, but always, I'll leave you with one more story. Mitch Cheffetz, Mitch is another rabbi friend of mine, and he writes books on Kabbalah and other things. He once taught a class, which I'll never forget. He said, "This is a picture of a Kabbalist." And he wrote on the board a person, but in place of the face, it had a radio transmitter. So the radio transmitter and with the big satellite, was picking up signals from the universe. So you have to be able to receive. But the feet of the person who was wearing Birkenstocks. So he said, remember, to be a good mystic, you have to be grounded.
Yes, and
That's
that is the main thing that Kabbalah does for us.
oh,
It grounds us it brings us back to earth. At the same time, we're aware of
More conscious.
more conscious of what is more than what we see.
I see. Yeah.
One-
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the percent is what we see, right? But the other percentage of it is more.
Beautiful. Well, and that's why, in some sense, even though I have my criticisms of today's Hasidim, politically and financially and stuff, if it hadn't been for the Hasidism, the only Kabbalah we would have had would have been the 11th and 12th century, maybe a little bit of Luria, but Hasidism picked up on Luria's teachings, and now, as I said, Zalman and Moshe Edel and Rabbi Matt and the feminist element, we're all kind of teaching, and that's why. And I'm not going to answer this tonight, but what is Jewish renewal, and why I am a part of it is I was not content to just learn the left brain that I was learning with Reconstructionism. I also had to study Hasidism with Zalman and Art Green and others. So yes, we need both the right and left brain. So next week, guys, and if you want to meet, and you know what, just take it among yourselves. If you want to meet in person, we can do that, except for Herb and Pablo, Zoom in. I'm meeting you guys tomorrow. Wait,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes,
yes,
tomorrow.
I'm meeting you tomorrow, and I'm meeting Sam and Emily tomorrow evening. All right, but anyway, if you guys want to, the next 2 weeks are devoted to life cycle, birth and bar mitzvah and death and weddings and all that great stuff. And if we have time, we'll also cover some other Middle Ages stuff. I also want to urge people, although I haven't been sending it out, and I'm making it you accountable, but come up with a topic or run by me, email me privately what you'd like to write about or what you'd like to explore. And it doesn't have to be a big deal. But Jamie did an incredible slideshow or PowerPoint on the Jews in Germany during the Holocaust. Maybe somebody has an idea of something they want to do. Maybe you want to do something about, you got cats and dogs. Oh, that's a cat over there and a dog over here. Maybe you want to do something about Judaism and its relation to animals. How should we treat our animals? So I urge you again, My Jewish Learning, Wikipedia, and our textbooks. So come up with ideas and just run them by me. And then you present it to the class 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever you like. Let's see what else. I will see everybody who's here in town Friday night at services. Sunday at 4 o'clock, there is a service at for our ML King Day at it's on the news, it's on the website of the synagogue. It is a very neat, amazing experience of our local Black church, and they really rock the house. Last year I jammed with them. I don't have time to rehearse this year with them, but so look at our website for that. Herb looks like he ran out. Thank you, Darla and Pablo, for sticking around with us. And may the blessings of God rest upon you. May God's peace abide with you. May God's presence illuminate your heart now and forevermore. Thank you. All right. Good night, everybody. Thank you, Steph.
Thank you, Rob.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. We'll get the recording to everybody.
All right, thanks.
Bye.
Thanks.